Hello and welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast. My name is Owen Campbell. I am the owner of Simplify Motion Physical Therapy in Phoenix, Arizona, and I am flying solo today. So regular listeners will know we haven't been putting out a podcast each week over the past 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Just some stuff has come up with different holidays and stuff with Brian and I that we weren't able to connect. But I wanted to get something out at least so that we can continue keeping the feed rolling, keeping communication with our listeners. We've had some new entrants into our school program, so that's really cool. The mentorship. We've actually been doing some pretty cool things on the back end with our physio growth company. We are now officially an LLC, and we're going to be putting out more and more content on that school platform just because we're finding that we're able to produce pretty good value, and right now it's all free, and we're really excited about where everything's going. So today I wanted to hop on and talk a little bit about mentality of a business owner. And this goes for all levels, and it even goes for management too. So if you're listening to this and you are a regional director or even just managing a clinic, these are all things that anybody who leads people, who looks at their value as how the business is doing, how the business is growing, the mentality of that can be really great, right? We all know those people who get really, really high when something good happens and really, really low when something bad happens. We also know those people, and I'm not one of these people, so I'm very jealous, that can stay kind of level headed through those ups and downs. And there's benefits to both, right? Um, and some of the biggest things as you grow is finding somebody who offsets that, right? And that's something that we can talk about. And put one of the things that I just posted on the mentorship group is how to hire your first person, right? So if you are halfway busy or three quarters of the way busy, probably the biggest wall most solopreneurs will come up against is they will stall and they will just be working like crazy because they've done so much marketing and such good work to keep their business going, but they haven't even thought about hiring until they absolutely needed it. So on that mentorship program, I go through how to set yourself up for success before you've quote unquote been successful, before you have that busy clinic waiting list. And then I also go through the nuts and bolts of the actual hiring process, kind of how you make sure you set it up so that it's advantageous to you. So when we talk about mentality, that was kind of a side thing. But when we talk about the mentality, the biggest thing I want to talk about is comparisons, right? And we all do it. If we run a business, we're all looking at the other people in our town at their Instagram page, or we're hearing clients who say, "Oh yeah, I talked to so and so PT 2 hours ago," or you see their ads coming across Facebook, and you're like, "Man, that looks really cool. They must have all the money in the world to get that advertising going, or able to do certain things." And it can put you in a negative space, right? But it can also put you, it's actually can be really, really advantageous to compare yourself to people, right? So the biggest thing that I want to get over is comparisons are good and bad. So they're very good in the way that you can kind of see what your competition's doing and what's working. If they start throwing in a bunch of advertising, or they start throwing in a lot of social media time to a certain intervention like pelvic floor physical therapy or dry needling or cupping or whatever, you might think, well, man, there's got to be a reason they're doing that, right? So maybe I should push that a little bit more. Maybe there's a patient population out there that I haven't quite understood yet. Or they're highlighting something about their offerings that you would highlight, but maybe not as much as they are. You might be thinking, man, they might have got some good feedback there. Maybe I can start maybe highlighting how accessible I am. Or if I'm not seeing as many patients because you're paying me a decent amount, that allows me to do more things for you outside of our one on one sessions. Something like that. So it's a good way of kind of picking out good ideas from people, or at least what may lead you down the path to start having your own good idea. It's also a good measuring stick, right? You can kind of see how many followers they have. If you know the person, you can kind of ask them, okay, how'd you get that many followers? What's going on? Even cold DMing people to kind of figure out how they do that. It also allows you. Sometimes people post, "I have this many things open, whatever. It shows you, okay, if that guy or gal can do it, then I can do it, right? It gives you a little bit more confidence to be able to start a workshop, start a program, something, right? And it gives you a sense of the market. We talked about that a little bit before, but what offerings are really hitting with people tend to be the one that that business owners will spend more time and money on. So those are some of the really good things about comparing yourself to other people in your market and specifically in your niche is it really does give you a lot of feedback, real time feedback. You just have to kind of be careful about the lens, right? But it's something that could spark some innovation and creativity when you're kind of feeling worn out and down. But really, I mean, we all know this. There's a big downside to comparison, and when you compare yourself to other people, the hardest part that I've always found is we have these mentality biases and we have these things that if you look in the neuroscience research, there is a lot of that keeping up with the Joneses mentality. You always assume other people have so much more things than you and that you have so much worse or so much less things. So part of that is biological, right? We If we negatively assume, then we're fearful, we keep our resources, and we're less likely to not have enough water in the camp in the Stone Age or whatever. So that negativity bias of what we have, it was protective at a time, but it's something you have to learn to kind of get around yourself. So when you look and you compare and you look at somebody's social media feed and you say, man, they're working with, it looks like a high school athlete from the local high school. It's very easy for you to say, well, I'm not working with an athlete there. Okay, well, that's one step, but then the next step down the road is, well, maybe they're getting all of them. Maybe they have the contracts for all the teams. Maybe they've completely closed me out of the market. I'll never get an athlete. And I better just start seeing geriatrics. You see how it can kind of snowball, right? And that bias is something that all is everyone has, right? Very few people have mastered how to not have that. And it's almost always based on an imperfect picture, right? And that imperfect picture, social media just juices this, right? You want to show everybody your best thing. Nobody takes a picture of themselves at a wedding and shows the one on social media where they're like downing a glass of wine and their heels are off and they're hunched over, right? They take the one where they are looking great, the lighting's perfect, they look like they haven't had about 5 Red Bull vodkas or whatever it is now. Those are back at, I'm aging myself, but those are the wedding photos that we took. So knowing those circumstances of the other person in the social media aspect is going to be really helpful to help like prevent that. And the other part too is, sometimes you don't know, maybe they do have the whole team, maybe they do have great workshops, maybe they do have all these things, but you can't let that make you think negatively about yourself because there might be some stuff that you don't know about. Maybe their dad is the lacrosse coach. So of course they were always going to get that, and there's nothing you can do about that. Maybe they never had to pay for college. They came from a family of wealth and they started right away with a massive ad budget and they're just pumping that out. Now, the problem with that is that is great for now. And it makes you, if you let that make you feel bad now, it will definitely make you feel bad now. But those two things, as an example, are short term positives, right? Dad's only the lacrosse coach for a certain amount of time. You're only going to have so much money. And eventually, I mean, some people, they're bankrolled forever, but eventually daddy's going to stop giving them money if their service is garbage, if they don't know how to connect with people, and if they don't know how to make and create a business. Eventually, dad's not going to invest in that, right? So, these are things that maybe you might look at now and say, oh, God, I'm not doing anything. And you negatively reflect on your process, your system, right? And you're going to look at that and say, I must be doing something wrong. I must be missing this key or didn't have this meeting or a coffee with somebody, or maybe I got to retool my ad budget, or use green instead of blue because that catches the eye more on my social media ads or my posts, whatever. These are all things that with a good system you will be able to kind of get over, right? So this is those that lucky break, that big sort of, someone gets, I don't know, a billionaire runs into him at the supermarket with a boot on their foot, and they just happen to say, "Hey, by the way, I'm a PT." You know, that's lucky break, right? Now, if they keep that guy and he tells five other friends, well, that's good. That's good work, right? That's them having a good product. That's them marketing themselves, showing the customer the value of their services. Awesome, good for them. But you have to think sometimes when you're seeing these things and when you see other people and you see what they're doing, don't necessarily think that it's the result of a perfect process and they started from zero and they organically built all of that stuff. A good majority of them have. Some of them, you really just have to look at the fact like, hey, they've been doing it for 4 years more than I have, right? They've had 4 years more of connecting with people as a company, as a business, whatever. Sometimes that's the case, and you can't get mad about that. You can't just create time. You can't create time in the market. So these are things that when you're looking at other people and how they're improving or how they're showing their business, and just the negative impact, the negative self talk can really ruin your day and prevent you from doing the right stuff, the stuff that really would keep the business going, and the processes that would keep you motivated and making those connections. Is so when you're looking at these things, just kind of take that into a perspective. Now, the big thing, as we kind of touched on, as I just touched on just now, is how to avoid this, right? So, first step is kind of knowing, right? Why do I have this bias? It's natural. I'm not thinking negatively when I would have otherwise thought positively. You're supposed to have this protective bias of, you know, I need what I'm doing isn't just good enough, right? Because that bias is what makes you seek out the next hunting ground, right? If we're talking the Stone Age analogy, or seek out the next watering hole or something and progress your little tribe or civilization's thing, right? So know that you cannot change that, right? So you just have to learn how to manage it. And one of the best ways to manage that is setting up systems. And I know Brian has talked about this as probably one of his biggest regrets when he was first starting, is that he didn't take the time to set up the systems that will eventually make life easy for him later. So in a lot of respects, he was talking about things like employment and recruiting and CRM, which is reputation management, or sorry, customer relationship management, SEO, search optimization management, all these things that he just never started at the beginning. So then it became a big amount of work as he got bigger and needed them to grow more than just a one person clinic. But what I want to really impress on anyone listening this is that you need to have kind of a mental system at the beginning, right? And what that means is more like you need to be able to find a way to determine, am I doing the right things? Am I making the right steps? Am I missing something big, right? And no one has a crystal ball. You cannot see the future. Ask anyone who managed a clinic through the pandemic. We all thought we were on the right path until about March 2020, right? So there is no way of making sure this happens. But if you have a system that you use to either find new clients, right, or find new patients, if you have a system to figure out how well am I making sure, or how much am I making sure that my patients are happy, what are my outcomes, is that something that I feel is within a respectable margin, right? And also financially, am I spending too much money on certain things that aren't giving me enough feedback? So this is, if you ever look into some marketing tools and platforms, some of the best ones are the ones that really show how do you know that your marketing's working, right? It's all well and good to say, well, I sponsored this pickleball tournament and I sponsored this golf tournament and I went down to the local Y and put my table out there. But you have to ask customers that's walk through your door, how did you hear about us? And you've seen that if anybody's worked for a big corporate clinic, that is like on the first page of the paperwork. How did you hear about us? And it's because the marketing department wants to know where to spend your money. So you have to do the same thing. Thankfully, when you start out and you're super small, just ask people. They'll tell you. right? My friend told me, or oh, I saw. You remember meeting them at the gym grand opening or something like that. But having those systems in place for multiple parts of your business will help you to kind of say, okay, maybe so and so PT down the street is doing this great pop-up thing with the swimmers in the neighborhood, right? The local swim club or something like that, and they've put it all on social media, and oh, isn't that great? But I know that with my metrics, I am hitting where I should be, right? Now the question is, how do you know that your metrics are good? Right? Like, I could say, wow, I should have a 10% return on my, or a 10 time return on my money for customer acquisition cost. Well, if you ask anybody who's been in business long enough, they will tell you, if you are making 10 times the return for how much you spend on marketing, you're going to be a bazillionaire. There's that is a very limited amount of industries that can really do that, right? And the ones that can usually are pretty high up. They're the Coca-Colas, they're the Facebooks, they're the things that are just basically ingrained into everyone's life to the point that they don't ever need to market it. They just know people are going to look at it, right? They've been in business for 100 years and sold a bajillion cans of Coke, right? So the way that you know that your goals are kind of smart and appropriate for you is setting up a mentorship system. So what I usually would coach my managers, my clinic managers, when I was working in corporate PT, and I was a big part of my job was mentoring new managers, people who came up from staff and wanted to run a clinic. I would say, okay, well, what's your mentorship plan? And they said, well, I don't know, you, I guess. Like, what are you doing? And I said, well, yeah, okay, I'm fine, right? And I'm happy to help. And I will help. There was a structured program that we went through, but I would always encourage them. You want to go outside of this company, and you want, or even within the company, because in some of the companies we had a lot of managers, and I just say cold email them, someone that's not your boss, right? And I would say, you want to find somebody that's 2 years ahead of you, where you want to be in 2 years. You want to find someone who is 5 years ahead of you, like where you think you want to be in 5 years, right? And then you want to find somebody who's 10 plus years ahead of you, right? And just think about what you want your next 10 years to be, and then try and find somebody that's somewhere close to that. So for me, I have a really good friend of mine. Actually, I used to be his boss. And he started exactly 2 years ahead of me. And this is what the conversation kind of sparked. Is I was talking to him, and I'm like, oh, I should do a podcast on this. And it really is helpful because he can not only say, this is what I'm doing in this market now that's working, right? So that's excellent, right? and he's on the other side of town, so we're not direct competitors. Um, but he can also ask me questions, and we can share things back and forth, and we can kind of figure out, man, maybe I am doing okay, or ooh, okay, he's doing that and he saw a lot of returns, so maybe I can strike while the iron's hot in doing that. So it'll give you very procedural, direct things that you can do for somebody within maybe 1 to 2 years ahead of you that you respect, right? That you think did a good job of building their business, right? And then the 5 year plan, right? The 5 year forward is kind of what Brian is to me, right? He just acquired another clinic, so he's got 5 clinics, right? He built his company up, and I wouldn't say 5. He's kind of in between. He's about 8 years. He started with Evolution. So, um, but when I started, he was a lot closer, and I relied on him a lot, and he would be the one that said, this is a good idea. You should do this, or you know, direct yourself. Your big idea. You're not your 3 week plan or your 3 month plan, but your 3 year plan should be towards this. So that gave me some direction, so that when somebody was saying, why aren't you doing this, or why aren't you taking insurance, or why do you take insurance? So, all those questions that, maybe don't, they seem big, but he can tell me, oh, that's a big ramification in the future. You want to put everything you can towards that. You want to put your mentality, your downtime, your thinking time, your big idea time towards those things. That was really helpful. And then that'll guide you a lot when you're looking at people and say, "Oh, I don't know why that guy's doing this," or you're comparing all these different things, trying to give yourself some grounding, some anchoring. That will really help, that 5 year to 10 year mark of somebody ahead of you, because they've seen it, they've done it, and then they've also done it enough and seen other people do it enough that they've kind of seen people fall off. They've seen people who've made mistakes or haven't done certain things that were their competitors that now aren't their competitors. And they also for them, somebody 5 years ahead, the next type of mentor we'll talk about, they're going to be looking at them really hard and say, well, this is what my guy tells me, so I'm going to tell Owen this, right? So they're a very valuable mentor to have. And for new grads out there, you may these the first two are usually easier to find. They're somewhere around your social group, somewhere around your age, very relatable. You probably know somebody who knows somebody who could get you in touch with a mentor like this. Um, but but someone who has done what Brian has done, there's very few of them, right? Very few people have grown to 5 brick and mortar clinics, right? With who are still growing, right? Not just looking to sell. And even farther still, if you're able to talk to some of these like higher ups and some of the bigger corporations, bigger companies in your space, or even in different spaces, right? This is tiny. There's so few people that do these things that once you get to that higher level, you're going to want to start looking around for different industries, because then you're just more talking about business than a specific industry. But the big takeaway here is that mentors really help ground you, right? And they help you to kind of say, okay, bring everything back in. How am I doing this? Is everything where I should be, right? So this is something I would always kind of work towards with other managers, but honestly, now that I'm doing it and it's affecting my business, I like working towards it with me, is really working on how you are internalizing comparisons, keeping up with the Joneses, whatever you want to call it, and really making sure that you're really getting the right picture and knowing kind of, hey, where should I go? And leveraging people who have done it before. They've done the hard work. And if you can leverage that really well, they'll be able to tell you, okay, I would do this, or here's my, form that I would use for this, or, don't buy that. That's a waste of money. I've never used it. People who've walked the path before, they can make your trial by fire learning just happen a lot quicker. And this is part of the reason we put out this mentorship, right? So I've had 12, well, 13 years managing big corporation, big company clinics, right? So for anybody who's really looking to get to that scale, or really just anybody who has like people management concerns, hiring, firing, motivating people, developing a mentorship program that actually works instead of just copying like some school textbook and saying it's mentorship. Along with Brian, who's really walked the entrepreneurial path and knows how to just grind, man. So this is why we started our front row back row mentorship. We're actually going to call it now Physio Growth Mentorship, and that is a school program. It is on the school platform. This thing is super cool. We can put out classes and videos. They can be 10-minute long videos all the way to, I just recorded a half-hour one on the process of bringing on your first employee. So if you want to check that out, it is in the show notes. And if you have any questions at all, just like, comment, all that stuff. I don't want to say like, comment, subscribe, because that sounds like I'm a YouTube. I watch way too much YouTube, by the way. But seriously, we really want to talk about things that people want to hear about. So the more that you can interact with us, either here on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on YouTube, or if you're in that group, the nice thing about the group is we can all kind of brainstorm. There's a lot of business owners in there that are able to bring in things, not just me and Brian. So I encourage you to look that up. And with that, have a great day.